think that this place is truly living out the meaning of the word sanctuary. And by that I don't mean the beautiful building. I really mean the place that creates a safe environment for people to re-explore a way of living out their spiritual religious life in community.
There's a kind of bold, almost reckless quality to the assumption that you can have a thriving, not just a marginal, but a thriving religious community that is decidedly not like the dominant way of life. And yet it resembles any other church.
I think it resonates with people searching for a place that allows them to ask questions, to incorporate a variety of aspects of their spiritual journeys, their learning journeys, their service journeys. A ministry connected to education and a ministry connected to pastoral care is really about people more than it is about the programs I'm responsible for or even my role as a pastor.
There's as many different stories as there are people out there.
My message of you belong here means, yes, even if no one else wants to hear you, we will give you a hearing. Not because you're right, but because unless we hear all the points of view, we will inevitably close ranks around a partial truth, not a whole truth.
I really want to know what gifts people want to bring, what are their passions, and how can we match that passion with some need that we have.
And when I bump into people on both sides of need and ability in that, who are helping each other in different ways, that's when I'm most inspired. The question is, can we pick up the energy that both honors the great traditions and speaks them in a way that's relevant to what happened in the newspaper yesterday?
What a friend we have in Robin Connell, who reminds us that the heartfelt songs of our parents and grandparents may no longer speak to the jots and tittles of our beliefs, but still carry the heartbeats and breaths of authenticity. So when you play those hymns, I want to sing along. And I'm not reading ahead to see if I agree with the words, because there's a certain honesty in the way you play that makes it possible for us to hear your Father and you. Thank you. My name's Fred Wooden. I work here. She does not, but you volunteered for the day, so I'm immediately grateful. And here you are on a holiday weekend when you could be at the shore. It's cloudy today. Take that, you cottage dwellers. But here you are at Fountain Street Church, and I will bring you some words by the great spiritual leader Howard Thurman when he talks about worship. He says, "In the quietness of this place, surrounded by the all-pervading presence of the holy, my heart whispers, keep fresh before me the moments of my high resolve, that in good times or in tempests I may not forget that to which my life is committed." It's easy to forget where we make our commitments, isn't it? Every day something demands our attention, tells us to take care of me now, whether it's turning on the dryer or turning off the air conditioner or just turning down the bed. And we know that's not what life is for. Those are needful, but not up there. And so we come here to a place like this to remind ourselves what the far horizon is about, lest our steps lead us in circles. I invite you now to do something very ritualistic, to sing, something you probably don't do except in your car, and use a book and do it in front of God and everybody else. And this hymn we're doing today is a little bit because of my subject. It's a tune many of us have heard over the years. If we grew up in a Protestant church, it is in fact a portion of a psalm text that has been rendered, "All people that on earth do dwell." It's a very old Reformed tune, and we're a Reformed city, so let's do some Reformed singing. This is often called Old Hundredth, although the words have been brought into the 21st century. Could you help us out, Miss Robin? I'm supposed to welcome you now. Welcome. Welcome. This is Fountain Street Church, the center and heart of liberal religion in West Michigan for almost 150 years. My name is Fred Wooden. I'm one of the clergy who serve here, a part of a larger staff that help our ministries happen, but you who are the members and friends, you are the ministers of this church. That is to say, you serve each other and the world at large by liberating your mind, by growing your soul, by changing the world. And because that's an endless task, we have to do this every blessed week. The good news is, no matter how badly we do it on a given Sunday, 7 days later we can try to do it a little better. And here you are on Labor Day weekend. This is our last Sunday as we conduct services at 10 a.m. only. Next Sunday we will resume our 11 a.m. service in the sanctuary, and our chapel community will resume worshiping here at 9:30. Two different and yet complementary ways of being Fountain Street Church. All the things you need to know about this week are printed in your order of worship, including that you can visit afterward and have a cup of coffee if you have not already. Tomorrow is a holiday, and we will be giving our staff the day off, so we will not be having office hours tomorrow. So please make the best of a day with fewer obligations, as it were. I know you have things to do. Do the things that matter more tomorrow, not just because they're on your to-do list. That's the welcome and announcements. I'd like you to join me in a responsive reading composed by a colleague of mine, now of memory. And I think this speaks to in some ways to what I'll be talking about later. Shall we join together? When love is felt or fear is known, when holidays and holy days and such times come, when anniversaries arrive by calendar or consciousness,
when seasons come as seasons do, old and known, but somehow new.
when lives are born or people die,
When something sacred is sensed in soil or sky.
mark the time.
Respond to thought or prayer or smile or grief.
Let nothing slip between the fingers of the mind, for all of these are holy things we will not, cannot, and amen.
There's a place that I know where the sycamores grow and daffodils have their fun, where the cares of the day seem to slowly fade away, and the glow of the evening sun. Peace when the day is done. If I go there real late, let my mind meditate on everything to be done. If I search deep inside, let my conscience be my guide, then the answers are sure to come. Don't have to worry none. When you find peace of mind, leave your worries behind. Don't say it can't be done. With a new point of view, life's true meaning comes to you, and the freedom you seek is what peace is for everyone.
I heard that Nora was a student at Interlochen. A long time ago. Did you have any connection with her then?
I was her teacher.
That's what I wanted you to say. And so her excellence is in part due to your nurturing. Well, that's the difference. As I pointed out under another context, when Mark Twain was asked the difference between the right word and the almost like right word is the difference between lightning and lightning bug. So you added or took away the bug so she could have the lightning. Do not underestimate the power of a teacher. I'll be mentioning that later. So if you like Nora Jones, thank her. In part. And I'm completely jealous. What can I say? But I'm good at jealousy. It's one of my gifts. What can I say? Prayer, meditation, and silence. Did you notice the words we sang when we began? They're really very powerful words. You know, when you sing the words, but you really don't think about them because you're trying to get on to the next note. All people that on earth do dwell, sing. Can you imagine the whole world singing at once? Sing ye aloud with cheerful voice, cheerful. Let hearts in exultation swell, come now together and rejoice. Now, unfortunately, that tune doesn't have the zip that the words deserve, but I think you can hear an intent to lift your soul to a point where the only thing you can say is a kind of cosmic hooray. Someone once described the word hallelujah, which literally means we praise God, as Hebrew for whoopee, which is what its intent is supposed to be, exuberant, to some extent ecstatic. Something I heard a piece of when you were doing those iterations of your father's hymns. There was There is an ecstatic quality rather than a pious one. I like that. But look at that second verse. Oh, welcome in this day with praise. I don't know about you, but as I get older, and I'm veering toward Medicare faster than I like to admit, any day I wake up is a kind of a hallelujah all by itself. And I imagine that becomes more powerful. The gratitude for being becomes more conscious with age. Even though I can remember as a child, there were some times when just taking in the breath, just taking a deep breath was almost a drug of intoxication to feel alive. Oh, welcome in this day with praise. Approach with joy your God unto. Not with fear, not with trepidation, not with anxiety or guilt, but with joy. Do you have a God of any kind that you would approach with joy? If you don't, you need a better God. Give thanks and faith proclaim always, for it is seemly so to do. I love that word, seemly. It's like the word comely. It's antiquated, but it means fitting and proper and goodly. For we believe that life is good. Reminds me of a story. A member of a previous church who was something of a mentor. She came from a good Italian family and told me the story about her grandfather sitting across the table from her when she was a little girl, and there was a bowl of apples, and a couple of the apples had bruises on them, but some of them didn't. And she reached for one with the bruise, figuring it was the appropriate thing to do, and grandfather batted her hand away, and he said, "Take the good. Take the good." And she looked puzzled, she reports to me, and her grandfather told her, "The good may not come tomorrow. Take the good. It is here now. Take the good." It is not selfish to wish the good for yourself. For we believe that life is good. Love doth abide forevermore. As there is a faith statement we all share, there it is. Truth firmer than a rock. Think about that. How old is the stone? And truth is firmer than that, and shall from age to age endure. With this in mind, we pray. Oh, how confined we are in the clothing of our soul to be seemly in all the appropriate ways, not to laugh out loud, too loud, not to stand when we should sit, not to be merry when we should be sober. But if we could, we would take the good. We would bite into the best of the apples. We would leap to our feet as though every worship service were a football game and the home team always won. How can we be more free of spirit that we may be also more free of mind? How can we be free of mind and not free of spirit? And how can we do that without offending the sensibilities of the world that so carefully make sure that nothing changes and therefore nothing gets better? Do not wait for the preacher to rouse you to your feet. Do not wait for the musician to power into your soul with notes and sounds. Approach with God, with joy your God unto, because life is good. Even those who are walking in the midst of pain cling to life, for it is good even in the struggle. Even those who are struggling against forces too large to be defeated, they sing with joy. And so shall we. For in doing so, we bring a healing balm to ourselves and the world, and defy all the powers and principalities that would deny us the life that shall from age to age endure. Upon these things we give ourselves now into that most sacred place held in the presence of silence. And so may it be.
The cost is sometimes dear. Being complete, knowing defeat, keeping on from year to year. It takes some doing. Monkery's the blues you hear. Keeping on from year to year. Life is a school, lest you're a fool, but the learning brings you pain. Knowing just once you're just a dunce, trial and error, loss and gain. It takes some doing. Monkery's a slow, slow train. Trial and error, loss and gain. Finding your own place in the sun doesn't come the easy way. Shallow and deep, nothing is cheap, measured by the dues you pay. It takes some doing. Monkery's the blue highway, measured by the dues you pay.
It doesn't say so, but I'd like to offer a couple of readings. That's a ritual too. I'll be talking about rituals. 3 passages, 3 different sources. I'll save the longest for last. One, I think, comes from Emperor Haile Selassie I. Who knew? At least that's what it says when I looked it up. The temple of the Most High begins with the body which houses our life, the essence of our existence. Africans are in bondage today because they approach spirituality through religion provided by foreign invaders and conquerors. We must stop confusing religion and spirituality. Religion is a set of rules, regulations, and rituals created by humans, which was supposed to help people grow spiritually. Due to human imperfection, religion has become corrupt, political, divisive, and a tool for power struggle. Spirituality is not theology or ideology. It is simply a way of life, pure and original as was given by the Most High of creation. Spirituality is a network linking us to the Most High, the universe, and each other. The agrarian poet, the Kentucky bard Wendell Berry said, "The difference between a path and a road is not only the obvious one. A path is little more than a habit that comes with knowledge of a place. It is a sort of ritual of familiarity. As a form, it is a form of contact with a known landscape. It is not destructive. It is the perfect adaptation through experience and familiarity of movement to place." That's a tough sentence. It is the perfect adaptation of movement to place. I'll interpret. You ever take a path? It never goes straight. It always goes around the corner. It follows the contour of the land. He says ultimately, it obeys the natural contours. Such obstacles as it meets, it goes around. That's the difference between a path and a road. Finally, unrelated to my sermon, but pertinent to the time, the last 2 stanzas of W.H. Auden's poem, September 1st, 1939. September 1st was, in fact, the anniversary of the outbreak of World War II, which defined our world in ways that we still barely understand. He writes this from a bar in Manhattan. "All I have is a voice to undo the folded lie, the romantic lie in the brain of the sensual man in the street, and the lie of authority whose buildings grope the sky. There is no such thing as the state, and no one exists alone. Hunger allows no choice to the citizen or the police. We must love one another or die. Defenseless, under the night, our world in stupor lies. Yet dotted everywhere, ironic points of light flash out wherever the just exchange their messages. May I, composed like them of eros and of dust, beleaguered by the same negation and despair, show an affirming flame. It's an elegant way of asking for hope in the midst of hopelessness. With that pause, I turn to Robin Connell to lift us up with Billy Sprouts.
I overlooked so many things through the years, through my fears, through the tears. Then I went and opened my eyes. You were my ideal heaven with open arms. Now that I found you, I can rest. I think that it is best we'll build a little nest near the rest. Yes, the rest. I overlooked so many things through the years, through the tears, through the years. Then I went and opened my eyes. You were my ideal heaven with open arms. Now that I found you, I can rest. I think that it is best we'll build a little nest near the rest. Yes, the best. Overlooked so many things through the years, through the tears, through my fears. Then I went and opened my eyes. You were my ideal heaven with open arms. Now that I found you, I can rest. I think that it's best we'll build a little nest near the rest. Yes, the best. Good job.
So it is September. And I wasn't alive in 1939, much less remembering it. But I am remembering September of 1971. I'm remembering that because that was when I was a college freshman. And I sat there in front of my advisor, and my advisor looked at me and said, "You have to take a number of courses in a variety of areas, and let's open the catalog." He opened up the catalog, looked at the first page, and said, "Asian Studies 101, you should take that course." Who was I to disagree? This was my advisor. I didn't know from good, from bad, from right, from wrong. And so there I was in the first class a few days later, being handed something called a syllabus. What was that? But I knew at the end of class it meant going to the bookstore. And there I was in the bookstore with other syllabi, piling the books in my arm. And the last one, the smallest one, therefore the one on top, was The Narrow Road to the Deep North and Other Travelogues by Matsuo Basho. And thus began a journey that went with me through college, to seminary, to Chicago, Massachusetts, Austin, Brooklyn, and finally to Japan. In 2014, 43 years after I purchased the book. Basho, in case you don't know, is a poet of 17th century Japan. And he was using a new form of poetry then. It was called Haikai no Ringa, which meant comic linked verse that began with a 3-line, 17-syllable object called a hokku. But he took it out of the context and just wrote those. And in the 19th century, they would begin to call them haiku, and it had that character of 17 syllables, usually arranged in 3 stanzas. He used those 3 lines, those 17 syllables, to capture moments on his journeys, like Japanese calligraphy or Japanese drawing, sparse, austere, crisp. He used those few syllables and few lines to capture something that was passing by so quickly that you couldn't dwell on it. His most famous poem I learned in Japanese, Furu Ikeya, Kawazu Tobikomo Mizo no Oto. That's his most famous poem. An old pond, a frog jumps, sound of water. You have to figure out what it means. Like a Zen koan, and he was a student of Zen, it was a way of opening your mind to what you did not know so it could come in while you weren't looking. I learned that and others and became enthralled with the economy of 17 syllables. So much so that 43 years later, there I was, and I was walking through Japan like Matsuo Basho, not where he walked, that's been built up into a highway now, but along something called the Kumano Kodo, which is a pilgrimage route in the middle of rural Japan that goes from shrine to shrine. And I remember when I began, I got off a bus in the middle of nowhere, and there was a shrine, and I knew what I should do, that I should pour water over my hands, then pour some into my mouth and then let it fall out onto the ground, that I should then go over to the shrine itself, drop a coin or a yen note into the box, that I should bow and clap my hand twice to awaken the spirit in the shrine, ring the bell, and start walking. And that's what I did for the next 6 days, walking up and down through Japan, stopping at every shrine, sometimes seeing little statues called Jizos, little Buddhas, left along the pathway to take care of lost souls, especially of children. And in their laps would be rusted coins because no one would ever take them away. I added mine from time to time. In other words, for a solid week, I was a very devout Shinto Zen pilgrim, and I loved it. I was a very religious guy. You'd think I was always religious, but not always. But by nature, I think I really am. And I use that word knowing that there are really two meanings at least, and I want to talk about those two meanings. One of which is the one we usually hear in Protestant America. It means that you earnestly believe something to be very true about something cosmic like God, or something about God that's like the Bible. That's one meaning of religious. To be religious is to believe in A, B, C, D, or E, to know what all those letters T-U-L-I-P mean, to know your Westminster Catechism, to know the answer to the questions, and to believe them. But in another sense, religious has the sense of being committed to something that is important to you. Musicians practice regularly. Arthur Rubinstein once said that if he doesn't practice for 1 day, he notices. And if he didn't practice for 2 days, the critics noticed. And if he didn't practice for 3 days, the audience would notice. So he is religious in his practice of music. You have to practice religiously, which means committed, continually, consistently. In another sense, I lived in Texas many years ago, and they say down there that the real religion of Texas is high school football, which is to say everybody goes, everybody cares, everybody cheers. It's the one thing that unites all Texans, even as they disagree about which team they should be rooting for. I tell people that my real religion is exercise because I have gone to the gym more reliably, more consistently, more devotedly, and more ritually than I've even gone to church. And like religion in general, when I don't practice as a musician, when I don't feel connected to the things that are consistent in my life, something feels out of place. The days I don't get to go to the gym, I'm cranky. Something feels wrong when we're not following our religion, whatever that is. And in our worship, for example, we sing hymns. We do not sing them lustily. We don't sing them eagerly. We're not even sure we like to do it, but if we didn't do it, something would feel wrong, wouldn't it? We'd be missing something that is part of our practice. Let's call that thing a ritual. You do it because you sort of gotta, even when you forget why you gotta, and even when you don't really like what you're doing, you sort of gotta do it. That's my definition of religion, by the way. It's the thing, the rituals that keep body and soul together. Where one goes to church, even if one goes to church, is only occasionally one's religion. Because we have to remember the word religion comes from the same word as ligament and ligature. It means the thing that ties things together. And it means rituals, the things that hold communities together. It comes out of a Latin or a Roman sense that religion is meant to hold society together, keep it from falling apart, keep us all on the straight and narrow, whatever that was. As a former musician who didn't practice enough, as a devoted gym rat, as a creature of habit, I know that rituals are what get us through the day sometimes. My blessed mother-in-law of blessed memory, 2 days after her husband was buried, was at the beauty parlor having her hair done. Not from vanity, but she did it every Thursday for 50 years of her life. That's how she kept body and soul together. Laundry was done on Mondays. Meatloaf was eaten on Wednesdays. Yes, she was a creature of habit, and it held her together through the toughest parts of her life. You do it too. Can you brush your teeth differently than the way you do? Probably not. And if you do, it would feel wrong. How about how you prepare your coffee? Not just how you drink it, but how you prepare it. Probably follow the same set of steps every day. Or if you're a tea drinker, or if you're not a tea drinker, or anything. How do you decide what to wear? There's probably a ritual there. All the things that give order and shape to your day. Those are rituals. They're part of the religion that holds body and soul together, and when we depart from them, life becomes a little less certain, doesn't it? Now, when we go on vacation, it's great fun to break those rituals. You can pretend not to care. You don't have to shave. You don't have to take a shower at the same time, and we like being free from it, but we know it can't last forever. So we almost begin to want to go back to our patterns. It's good to step away, to vacate, but it's also good to come back and resume. I am a deeply religious man in all these senses. I rise at the same hour every day, and the clock doesn't have to wake me up. I just wake up. My eating and exercise habits have taken me from 240 pounds when I was 17 to 175 pounds, and that was conscious and for those many years. I have gone to church 90% of the Sundays in my life, and after I've been gone for 3 or 4 Sundays, something's wrong. I am virtually monastic in my habits. There's another word, habit. In fact, I like the word because monks wear habits, right? That's the clothing we call that monks wear, or that women religious. But we remember and should remember that the word habit is related to the word inhabit, which is the place you dwell. Our rituals clothe us. They give us a place to dwell against the uncertainties and unpredictabilities of life, as my mother-in-law knew too well. We derive a sense of self and safety and comfort and strength from the habits of the heart. As I mentioned earlier, next week the chapel goes back to its role as a home for a worship service that is entirely different from what we do at 11 o'clock. The chairs are rearranged. There are a couple of screens hung. The band, there is a band. Come and they sing. And it reflects, I think, those who prefer to call themselves spiritual but not religious. And it took me a while as a religious man to understand what that meant. But it came around to me eventually that it comes out of a suspicion of rituals for their own sake, of conforming to expectations, of the subtle hypocrisy of doing the right thing but not for the right reason, of confusing substance with intention. And there's reality to that. Haile Selassie's reading brings that forward, that rituals and religion can imprison us, not just protect us. And we can hide from life by clothing ourselves in things that look appropriate and socially acceptable, and even socially advantageous. I'll depart from my text here to talk about Governor Ann Richards. Anyone here remember Governor Ann Richards? I happened to arrive in Texas the fall that she was elected, and I departed just before she lost her election. I'm sorry, I could not work my magic. But the reality was that as I got to know who she was, I found out something I didn't know. When I arrived, I was serving the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Austin. And there in the membership book, years before, was a signature of one Ann Richards. She belonged to my church. Then she got active in public life and decided she would better be a Methodist. And from a political point of view, I understand why, but she had to clothe herself in something more respectable in order to accomplish her other goals. Call it hypocrisy? Perhaps. But that's the problem that people who call themselves spiritual but not religious are pointing to: the use of religion to avoid, evade, hide, or deny. And the way religions can hide us from ourselves. And so when they say they're spiritual but not religious, they're saying, I want a way to feel connected in a deep way, but I don't trust the institutions out there to lead me there. I'm afraid they're going to lead me away from it. And I mention that because our chapel community is populated with people who are wrestling with that feeling and putting their toe back in the church very gently, wondering if we will lead them astray as others have. I think the issue between being religious and being spiritual really does reside in that word habit. If we use religion to hide, to pretend, to evade, to affect some higher status than we actually have, or in some way to not be honest with ourselves and others, it is not a safe dwelling, but a hiding place, a cloister, a prison. Those who know the parable of the Good Samaritan may remember that the man who was robbed and left by the side of the road was passed by two other people first, a judge and a Levite. And we always look down on the judge and Levite, and we should. But Jesus' parable also gives more than you may realize. The judge and the Levite were prohibited by their religion from talking to, touching, and helping someone who had been defiled, and therefore they would be defiled. Their religion had imprisoned them and kept them from being a true neighbor. When we use religion to say, oh no, I can't touch, I can't talk, I can't relate to, we're not concerned with, that's the problem with a religious habit. It is no longer a dwelling that protects us, but a barrier that sequesters us. I've heard a story that here in West Michigan, where piety enjoys a long and vivid life, and that a certain devout Christian would not read the Sunday sports section because that would be considered worldly, but left his Sunday paper on the front porch while he sat there rocking. And his neighbor would just happen by every Sunday and come up on the porch and read the sports section loud. And if he just happened to hear it, that was not a problem. These are examples of religiosity without spirituality, following the form but not understanding the purpose. But I have to remind you that spirituality without religiosity is equally troubling. That's the part I need to lift up for my spiritual but not religious friends. Martin Buber, the great Jewish scholar, started out his career studying mysticism. You know, those people who meditate and have these wonderful experiences of union and communion with God or whatever. And he discovered that all the great mystics he encountered had one or two mystical moments in their entire lives and spent years in between, and he thought, I should probably think about what they're doing between mystical visions as much as when they have them. Should we spend our spiritual lives seeking a feeling looking for an experience. In the gospel, Martha and Mary are used as symbols of the gospel. And Mary is the nice one because she listens to Jesus, and Martha is chided for cleaning house. But if she didn't clean house, there would be no place for Jesus to sit or Mary to listen. The tasks of life are real. They are consequential, and the habits that we use to provide for a life that's decent are not without value. So I think Martha gets a bum rap. Caring for the world may not be spiritual, but it is essential. And when we talk about changing the world, it won't happen because we have a mystical dream. It's because we came down out of the clouds, rolled up our sleeves, got out the brooms, and pushed. W.H. Auden, whose poem I read earlier, takes Herod, evil Herod, in his great poem, The Christmas Oratorio, and sees the danger of spirituality run riot. Remember, this is Herod speaking, so there's irony in it. But he sees the little baby as a peril, and he's right. Herod says, reason will be replaced by revelation. Instead of rational law, objective truths perceptible to any who will undergo the necessary intellectual discipline, knowledge will degenerate into a riot of subjective visions. He's not wrong. If we all get to choose the truth based on what we feel when we feel good, we may be mystical, but we will be missing a whole lot of truth. To seek the spiritual without the religious, well, if religion without spirit is a corpse cold thing, spirit without religion is a ghost. It can do nothing. One has no soul, the other has no body. So we need both. The reason religion has endured for so long, despite its legendary depravities and disappointments, is that this is still the only durable path for keeping body and soul together. That's it. We can do it better, we can do it worse, but ultimately we can't do without it. And I say that to people who say, I have no religion. Yes, you do. You may not know it, but there is something in which you're placing your ultimate trust. There is something to which you're ultimately giving your heart and your mind. Perhaps it's politics. Everyone is highly political these days. They're believing in this and that, but we forget that politics can function like a religion. One reason for the rise of fascism on the right and our fascination with communism years before is that they actually behave like religions. They have heavens, they have hells, they have the elect, they have the damned, they have beliefs that cannot be proved, and they have myths that explain good and evil and everything else. They may not involve gods, but they sure enough tell you, I am right and you are wrong. Slightly less fervent are those friends down in Texas, maybe us. Sports loyalties. Go green.
Go white.
Thank you. Our ritual is complete. And I say go blue as well. I'll be generous. And yet the reality is we can get excited about sports in ways we should not get excited, and should get excited about other things. It has the zeal of religion. It has the thrill of excitement. And how about music and art that lift us up? Transport us to places we do not see from day to day, give us a sense of depth and meaning, and yet we cannot spend our days in concerts, movie houses, theaters, and art galleries. And let us not forget the true religions of far too many. Family, meaning that my family must come before everything else. Or work. How many men have devoted themselves to the temple of the work? Money. There's a God that has exerted endless power, and power itself. Is there not a religion of power itself? Any of these can become a religion, a way to define your meaning, your purpose, your value, and impose their rituals on your lives. So I'm saying that we should be wary of religion, but we cannot live without it either, because you have one whether you know it or not. So the point is, find it, scrutinize it, dig into it. You're going to have one way or the other. One of the reasons I am a liberal religionist is because we're well situated to speak on these terms. We don't have to defend any ramparts. We don't have any doctrines that need to be assailed or proved. Let's face it, most formal religions are like fast food franchises, aren't they? They have a limited menu from which you can order in certain sizes. Would you like to supersize that sacrament? And for many people, that works fine. But is it nourishing in the long run? I don't think so. You may get spiritual calories. You may get something to get you through the day. But if you wish to grow spiritually, chances are you need a broader diet. Chances are you'll need to make some of it at home. Chances are you will need to have a little bit more room to make your own choices, but you still must nourish yourself. You still have to learn how to nourish yourself. You still have to know when you are healthy and when you are sick. So we do not rely upon the structures of religion, but we give you the obligations of it anyhow. We can be nourished spiritually through religion, through good habits, the habits of learning, of doubting, of trying and failing, the habits of living with purpose one way or the other. That's why we say we are here to free the mind and to grow the soul, so that you can inhabit your religion alive, not dead. Matsuo Basho spoke to me a long time ago and still does. His pilgrim life awakened the pilgrim in me, and I've had the great satisfaction in these latter years to be able to walk over the hills of Japan and England, Peru and India, China, New Mexico, and yes, Michigan. I hope for more. But one need not leave to go on the pilgrimage of the Spirit. Just over a year ago, I began to compose a daily haiku. You may see them on Facebook from time to time. I chose to do this so that I would be forced to notice one moment in my day that I had overlooked as valuable. Because you can only write about something you think about, and so you need to think about something, not just do it. I needed a ritual to get me to think about things I was doing ritually. You know what I'm saying? And so I began to do that, to look for a moment that deserved my momentary attention. What I write is less important, actually, than the thinking about what I should write spiritually. But I have to do it, the ritual, in order to have the spiritual part. Do you see what I'm saying? If you don't do the religion, you won't get the spirituality. Not all my haiku are very good. They're not supposed to be. Not all of my sermons are very good. Not all churches are very good. But you must do them every week to get any of the good ones. How many of you have a vegetable garden? Are all of your tomatoes perfect? Of course not. But you have to grow all of them to get the good ones. I began my practice when I looked out my window an August evening exactly a year ago, just a little more. And I saw through the window the hosta in the moonlight. And I wrote this, my 17 syllables. On summer nights, the hosta are covered with snow, a gift from the moon. Can you capture a moment every day? You don't have to do it in poetry. Maybe a photograph, maybe bow. Perhaps it's to sing. Whatever it is, find a way to capture a moment. Because when you do get to keep it in your heart and memory. I can now recite that poem that I wrote, and I can be back on that day, looking through that window, seeing those hosta that night. I get to keep that. That's what we want. Nothing in Washington or Lansing can take that away from me. And that's what I think all of us want and all of us need. Right now, when the world is full of discouraging news, we are surrounded by moments of truth and beauty and goodness, and we're so busy fretting about everything that is untrue, unwise, ungood, and unbeautiful. We are ignoring the immensity of wealth around us by fretting about the few poverties that beset us. Every day has a moment that Auden would say is composed of eros and of dust. It's so short that it can only take 17 syllables to capture it, but that's all it takes. 17 syllables, half a minute, maybe just a blink, a smile. Anyone here remember learning about cricket cages? In Asia, you capture a cricket, which is supposed to be good luck, and put it in a cage. Find a way to capture the crickets of the spirit so they can chirp tomorrow as well as today. Find a way, a ritual, so that you can catch the spirit long enough for it to breathe upon you. That's what being religious is about. Creating cricket cages of the heart, where the truth, or that which is beautiful, or that which is good, can come and inhabit you and give you the life you wish and so very desperately need. If you do this, if you find those rituals and that religion, you will find the Spirit will dwell with you for at least a little while. And that may make life worth living in ways you hadn't guessed before. May these words of my mouth and meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my Redeemer. I went too long. I'm so sorry. I have to get back into shape, you know. It's like running your first mile after not doing it for a while. A little rusty. The hymn I've chosen is about a kind of religiosity of the daily. 312, here on the paths of every day. I'd like to read you a piece of the text so you can notice it as you go by. Noticing is the deal. Here on the paths of every day, here on the common human way is all the stuff the gods would take to build a heaven, to mold and make new Edens. Ours the task sublime, to build eternity in time. Shall we sing that together?